Good evening, traders. It is April 7th, 5:22 p.m. Eastern Time. Welcome to another video with Digital Goats Academy. I'm your host, Antoine Farrar, and welcome to our market overview section. Before I get into our segment, last week was NFP, right? It was NFP, and we had a lot of news from Trump. What was it? He had the tariff policy that enacted, on those countries based off their percentage. And all that stuff drove down the market. So the market did bleed, a lot more aggressive than I expected to. But the one thing that I peeped, me personally, that I saw in the market is that how fast the market was pushing down. Now, it seemed like an epidemic at that point, like almost like we were probably about to go into recession. That's what it looked like based off of like the stocks and stuff. And that means like a lot of earnings were lost across the board with stocks. So it seemed bad, right? It did seem bad. And I was actually surprised at how fast the market sold. You know what I'm saying? Because to be honest, me personally, I was expecting these moves I was expecting these moves last year. So last year, let me clear some of this up. Also, if you're tuning into this video, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. That greatly helps me grow this channel and allows me to do more for the community. But like I said, I was looking for these moves last year for the market to sell. We kind of talked about that at the beginning of this year in January. I did believe that the market was selling, but I didn't think it was going to sell this aggressively, right? But we still were trailing that there was a possibility of what an M pattern presenting itself in the market, which it did. And you can see that US 30 sold from this top. Pretty much the high was at 45K. I want to say 45.50, 45.25. The market created resistance and pushed the market all the way back down to these lower levels. Now, if I just go back to my other US 30 chart, which was with the broker Oranda, that's more of the information that I had from pretty much the past couple years, where I annotated that US 30, it had already been bullish prior to that, but I saw the breakout around March 2023. So is this the breakout? No, this is January. So you can see this is where the market basically started trending up from January. Yeah, January or April. April of 2020. Wow, it's almost like that's kind of crazy. April 2020, right? So the area that I ended up identifying that it was bullish, because I think I just started trading US 30 at that time, was around March of 2023. So March 2023 was pretty much this area, but I drew my trend line based off of 2020. But you see the trend line is carrying over. And again, like I don't use the trend line necessarily, but I see if the price responds off of the trend line. Because again, my trend line could be off of what the actual trend line is supposed to be in the market, right? So you can see this was the last previous high that the market came out of last year, right? And this is what I was expecting. This is what I was expecting for it to push down last year, which again, the market punched me in my face learning US 30 when it started pushing up. So by the time we got towards elections, man, once November hit, that market started pushing up like aggressively bullish, right? Aggressively bullish. And then by the time we got to January is where we started creating our resistance. And now we're pushing back down. This was the last area that the market broke out of that I expected for the market to return to, like I said, last year. And look where it came to. Now, we do need to establish some type of foundation. So we do need to establish support in this area if it is respecting this as a new support level. But you can see this was our last resistance level. Price broke out of it. And again, indices kind of show you a better picture, or it has cleaner moves, especially on the higher time frame of what the market is at least trying to show you. That's not saying that your entry will be on point, but at least trying to what the market is trying to show you on the higher time frame. Indices seem to be a little bit clearer once you get a little bit more data. So the fact that we pushed down here, I'm looking at the market to actually start buying back up, which we did. We did. So if I start going into what happened, because I didn't do my weekly review. Normally I do my weekly review, but because how volatile the market was, I couldn't really form a sentiment on what the market was actually trying to show me besides, with all that other news with the tariffs and it was NFP, which clearly it just kept bleeding. You know what I'm saying? The market just kept bleeding to pretty much try to establish some form of support. So how aggressive it pushed to the downside, I was expecting me looking at that because of how aggressive the market pushed up again, like I said, after Trump had won the polls. I'm ex what that market did was find resistance. That's what it wanted to do. It wanted to find resistance and it did it extremely fast. So if anybody was trading on November, man, it was a payday for indices, you know what I'm saying? So what I think that the market did last week and pretty much the entire month of March, because of how fast it sold down and how aggressive it sold down, was that it was trying to hurry up and find support in order for the market to still remain bullish this year. So like I said, one, we've already bounced off of this candle still has to be retested. You have to have test levels down here, but you can see that the market already bounced off of, which is the what? The previous high of the, what was that? What time frame was that? Weekly? Weekly, or it's probably still shows the same on the monthly, but you see it even respected actually started getting bullish from this moment. I mean, from this position. So currently at this price, I'm looking at the market to continue getting bullish, but we do still have some levels that we could possibly test low. Now, running through what happened this morning, I was in it, but I also gauged the market to kind of record what exactly happened as the market opened up. So Sunday, which was yesterday, right? So Sunday evening, the market it gapped down, right? So this is how the market opened all the way down here. I felt like this was the buy zone, so I bought. The market retested down to the zone. You see, it didn't go any lower than these two wicks right here. Now, 9:30 came out. And I did suspect it, but you just don't know with indices. It's not funny, but it is funny at the same time because it's like you say that, man, I think that there's a possibility. It's faint. You know what I'm saying? It's not, you don't really harp on it. It's faint. And the market does do that. So the market pretty much 9:30 opening bell pushed down to test these levels in order to solidify, yes, this is support. And as you can see, it started creating a foundation above this wick. And again, this is still structure. How do I know it's structure? If I turn it to online chart, I can see that this is structure. So currently the market is up after pretty much buying Sunday night, uh, pretty much going into London, get sold off, pushed up going into New York, and then opening bell, it collected liquidity, some more, basically collected liquidity, pushed the market up, and now we're currently up. The only thing is that are we going to continue pushing up from here, which I do believe, but are we going to try to establish a foundation to create support on this area? Now, with indices, when that normally happens, it takes a while, so it'll probably keep pushing up between, today, tomorrow. We'll see by like Thursday if anything changes, but I'm expecting this market to probably be all the way up here or, somewhere up here like 41, close to possibly the high, you know what I'm saying? Maybe not this week, but I do think that it's going to hit these lows. And if we're going to get a level of support for it to push down back to these levels, I think it's going to reach high up here first and then push all the way down there. So that's kind of like my sentiment for US 30. But again, I still think that we're bullish. I mean, it sounds insane, but I do believe that we're still bullish, especially how fast that the market sold down to these positions. So I think that buyers are in finally. We'll see. We'll see. But, the fact that the market is actually pushing up here, well, basically, once we get back to these levels, we'll kind of know from there. But again, I've always talked about that when the market hits these certain foundations, that it should react. So when it hits to these support levels that once we're resistance and broke through, well, once we're support and broke through and is going to be resistance, possibly, it should still react, even if it's not necessarily selling, you know what I'm saying? Or I mean buying. So even if it's not necessarily like buying all the way up here, by the time we get back up to these levels, we should possibly see a reaction when the market still tries to sell off to respect this foundation, if that makes sense. S&P, same thing. Now, S&P, I've been had this level marked up. S&P was what I was looking at last year primarily. I really just got back into I really just got into US 30 towards the end of 2024, but you might as well say the beginning of this year because this year is where I've been having the most success with US 30. But S&P last year, getting my head bust wide open. And again, leaving these annotations, these markups for me to still have a foundation to say that, okay, the market is buying up because these were levels that I was looking for the market to come back to last year in order for the market to keep trending up. So again, we've hit support levels. This is what is this, the daily? Let me show it on a weekly. We've hit a major support level. This support structure right here. This was, I think this is when I was first trying to gather how the gaps work. So I guess it did. Where was this? Yeah, liquidity field right here. So of course it wants to touch it again. Yeah, I think this is where I was trying to gather like what the gaps are. But again, support structure right here. How do I know that? Now you see how this market pretty much like could still push down. So that's something that I'm looking at, that the market could still push down because we haven't really created a valley here. If you see, we got a small movement to the upside like this. So you see how this is, a drop down, pushed up. We don't have that movement yet on the weekly time frame, but if we continue pushing up, it should turn into a valley. But again, because we don't have support meeting this support structure right here, there's a possibility that the market could return back to here in order to actually create that foundation that the market needs in order to start buying up. So far so good, but again, giant support structure right here. Giant support structure right here, but we'll see. We'll see if the market tries to continue pushing down. Again, if it does push down, I'm thinking that it's going to buy up first before it decides to push down any further. If it does, but it's a field day. If it does give us another sell opportunity, if it gives us a buy opportunity all the way back up to the highs, that's even better too. But I'm pretty much convinced because if you look at across the stock market, a lot of stocks are at foundational supports as well, or institutional support. So seeing how the stock market is flowing and seeing how indices are responding, yeah, the fact that we had all those major losses, I think this is prepping us for buyers to come in. You know what I'm saying? Drown everybody out, pull back in the market in order to test these levels, and then let's continue pushing up. But again, you have to see the foundation of how like indices operate, right? The only thing I'm curious is will it try to push down to these levels, these lower levels? But we'll cross that bridge when we get there. I don't think so right now, but again, I think, once we get back up to these lower, these previous lows. What's my thing not working? I think when we get all the way back up to these previous lows, then we'll have some type of clarity on what the market is trying to show us overall. But yeah, I'm bullish. I'm still bullish. Sounds crazy, even after those losses, but I do believe that we're still buying up in this market. So, still a great year to buy stocks, in my opinion. We'll see probably as we get closer to the end of Q2. But yeah, let's do one more thing. Let's do two more things. One is Bitcoin and the other is the dollar index. I actually didn't look at the dollar index today. I peeped at it last night. But the one thing that I saw that Bitcoin do is actually push down to that previous high that it broke out of, which was what? 74K. So if you break it down to the smaller time frames, if you scale in, you can see that at 74, 74.45. Yeah, 74.45. It created a swing low, created this valley. This looks like on the hour time frame a makeshift head and shoulder, but I don't know how valid that is. Y'all see that right there. Inverted. My bad, inverted head and shoulder. So that makes sense. Where's my little uh you look at the left shoulder, that being the left shoulder, and then over here being the right. We shall see. Now, this market is currently open, so we can see it live, but you can see the similarities between like S&P, US 30 and Bitcoin. So what I'm thinking is that US 30 is trying to catch up with Bitcoin, not necessarily in numbers, but in volume. You know what I'm saying? So I still think that US 30 is pushing the 50K, and I think that Bitcoin, it's probably next move will probably be to like 120, 125, and then we might get like some type of major pullback from there, or we could be ranging. But I do think that Bitcoin is getting ready to push back up, especially since we've come back to this previous high. Now, after it breaks, if it does break the high, it could want to dive a little bit deeper, and that's kind of like what I'm trying to analyze. If the market after it breaks these major highs up here. Yeah, if we can get a breakout where it says like this fake out, or it might want to establish resistance up here. That could be possible. Could want to establish resistance up here. But I'm thinking that, like I said, 120, I'm thinking that we'll push higher than this and then either come back to that 74K or push a little bit lower. But I do think that we're now at a support level because we've broken out of this high. This was the area that was pretty much fighting the market for a while. Had everybody against the ropes. I mean, even me believing that, Bitcoin was about to start tumbling to pull back to lower levels, but nope. Broke out of that 74K and we just retested that 74K. So what I'm looking at is that this is our support structure from our previous high, and this is our buy zone at least back up to either 108 or 110. So that's what I'm looking at for Bitcoin. But again, manage your trade wisely. It's still early in the year. It's still early in the week. But I mean, the year is approaching us. The end of the year is approaching us faster than you think. So just manage the market, accurately, wisely. Too easy, right? 103, we're back at that 103 for the dollar. So I did give out a signal last week. I think it was on a Friday for GJ, but I didn't stay in GJ. And GJ fell out the sky. Now, GU did the same thing. Remember, we were expecting GU to sell, and it just pushed up to those higher levels. It really pushed up to that level that we were talking about in the chart market video. So if you go back to that video, it really pushed back up to that high of that imbalance candle, which I kind of mentioned, but I thought that we were going to push down. But again, once those tariffs, took place, it kind of, I wouldn't say it changed the conditions because we already established that it was bullish, but our expectations of the turnaround was, completely off thanks to the tariffs. So we're still in the zones that we were looking for. The dollar, we were looking for it to turn around at 101. If it came down, we didn't want to see anything lower than that. One thing to mention is that it came back to this previous consolidation point. So I think we're heading back into inflationary territory, or the dollar could be ranging where it doesn't really break out of this. So we could be seeing the dollar start ranging between like 110 fighting between 104, doing that for, I don't know, maybe a couple years. And that'll probably actually subside the inflation and go into what they like to say a stagflationary period. But yeah, like it's the market is still responding the way we want it to, even though it was ugly in March. And when you really look at it, it was just really March that was the bad side of the market. Bled lower than what we expected to, because we did establish that there could be a possible major sell, but who knew the sell would be this major, right? But I will catch everybody on my next video. If you're viewing this on YouTube, obviously this is 2 days later for Discord. My community, you all have it tonight. But is there anything else I wanted to mention? No, that's pretty much it. You know what I'm saying? Again, we got rid of the noise. I think everything is based off of how you enter the market from here on out now. You know what I'm saying? We're in April. We're going to be heading towards Q3. So every trade counts from this point forward. You know what I'm saying? I really mean that every trade counts. So if you're trying to make, trades where it matters, like I really think this is the year that you should really be locking in to taking these opportunities, maybe staying up a little bit later, maybe getting up a little bit earlier. But that's just my recommendations for all my traders out there in the community. So I will see everybody on the next video with Digital Goats Academy. I hope everybody has a successful trading week.